Hi all, welcome to session 36 of Azure Data Factory, and in this session we are going to take a look at for each activity. For each activity is very common in Azure Data Factory pipelines because using this activity you can iterate over a collection. So when I say collection, generally it is array in Azure Data Factory. Okay, so suppose if you have a set of files that you want to copy like in a sequence and that you want to perform in a loop, so you can use for each activity and you can perform that operation in your data factory pipeline. Okay, but before we go and see the demo of this activity, let's just see the Python equivalent of the for each activity. Okay, so let me just go to browser based Python interpreter. So I'm going to use repl.it. I already have one, so I'm going to open that. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create list of numbers and I'm going to say some numbers like 1 2 3 4 5 6. It is auto completing for me, so let me do that. Okay, now suppose if you want to print each number in a new line. Okay, so for that you can use the for loop. Okay, and then you can say print number. So what this logic is going to do in line 3 and 4, what is happening is it is going to check one item at a time from the list, and after picking that item it is going to print that particular number and then it is going to move to the next item. Okay, so earlier if you are familiar with C, so it used to be like for I is equal to 0, then you know I is less than 10, I plus plus, something like that. So this used to be the syntax for loop. Okay, so here Python is smart enough to understand that after the execution is complete of for loop, it is going to automatically pick the new number. So this I plus plus is not required, it is automatically taking place in the for loop activity. Okay, so similar to this for loop, we have for each in our Azure Data Factory. Okay, so if you see the definition, as per the Microsoft, for each activity defines a repeating control flow in Azure Data Factory. So Microsoft is basically trying to say that you can use for each for creating loops in your pipeline. The activity is used to iterate over a collection. As we all know that collection is an array in Azure Data Factory and execute specified activity in a loop. So for example, if you have 10 files and you want to perform some operation over those files in a loop. Suppose if you want to copy, then you want to call a data flow. We will discuss data flow in the later sessions. It is a separate topic in itself, so we will see that. But data flow is basically used to transform the data that is there in the file. Okay, so you want to copy the file, then you want to perform some transformation using data flow, then you want to pass it into a database. All those things, if you want to perform on one file at a time, you can use for each activity, and you can define all these activities in a pipeline. Okay, and that loop implementation of this activity is similar to for each looping structure in programming language, like we are going to see in the Python. So now if you see the code is ready, let me just remove line number 6, and now let me just run this. And as you can see, it is printing one number in one line. Okay, so this is the for loop in Python, and similarly we have for each activity in your Azure Data Factory. Okay, so let's just try the use case that I just described. So I'm just going to copy the file. I'm not going to perform any transformation because that is for later sessions, but right now I'm just going to call a simple copy activity that is going to move the file from source to sync. Okay, so let me create a new pipeline first. Okay, I'm going to say pl for each demo. This is going to be the name of my pipeline, and after this I'm going to use my for each. Okay, so if you see this, you have a list of numbers. So list of numbers is what? A collection where you have a collection of numbers. So this is like an array of Java. In Python we call it list. So similarly it is going to ask you for a collection. So let me see, loop over file names. This is going to be the name of my activity. and it is asking for sequential or batch count. So what does this mean is, if you are picking sequential, this batch count will go away. So suppose if you have uh, just a second. So suppose if you have this list, okay, and the execution of each and every item is mutually exclusive. So when I say mutually exclusive means, what you are going to do with the number 1 is not going to affect number 2. So what you can do in this situation, you can parallelly execute for you can parallelly execute your loop for 4, 5, 6, whatever numbers possible, okay, because they are not related to each other. The execution of one is not going to impact the execution of two in any way. So for that kind of situation you can use batch count. Okay, so batch count is going to do exactly that. It is going to take 4, 5, or whatever number of items you are going to give here as one batch. We will see this also, but we will first see sequential. After that we will see this. Okay, so let me choose sequential for now, and it is asking for an parameter. Okay, so let me go and define a variable first. I'm going to say set variable, set file array. I'm giving the name as set file array for this variable. I'm going to go for settings. Right now I don't have any variable defined, so I'm going to define file names, and I'm going to say array. Okay, so here I'm going to say file1, file2, file3, file4. Okay, let me just deactivate the for each, and let me just run the pipeline to see whether the format of our array is right or not. So as you can see, it is right, but we should not give the square brackets here. Let me just remove that. The reason I face these kind of problems, because I don't work with arrays that much. We generally create these arrays by giving the configuration files, so we don't have to manually create it. But still, it is good to learn. Now let's see. Yep, I think I don't have to give the codes also. Let me remove that. File 2, file 3, and file 4. Perfect. Now you see you are getting the value, and in the value you have file 1, file 2, file 3, file 4. Okay, since we don't have any CSV file right now with these names in the source and sink, we have to create some. So let me go back to my notepad. Let me see. Okay, in the notepad I'm going to say ID, name, city, salary. Okay, so name is going to be, let's say, Jack. City London. Salary suppose £5,000. Okay, similarly I'm going to say Jill, Newark, $7,000. Arena, Delhi, 10,000 rupees. Okay, I think this should be enough. I'm going to create as file1 dot csv. Okay, let's see whether we have the file in the right format or not. I'm opening in Excel. Yes, it's looking good. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to just copy paste this file. I'm going to say file 2, then again file 3 and file 4. Okay, I think we are good. File 1, file 2, file 3, file 4, exactly like we have in our input array. Okay, now let me connect this to our loop, and I'm going to activate this activity for each activity. Okay, so here in the settings, if you go, it is asking for a parameter. Now you have to go and define file names. Okay, but for sake of our validation, let me just put a set variable activity inside the for each for now. I'm not going to give any name because anyway I'm going to delete it, but just for sake of understanding. Okay, so I'm going to say file name confirm, and I'm going to call item on it. Okay, so let's debug. So the for loop should be executing 4 times because we have 4 items in our array. So if you see, there is like set variable activity getting initialized 4 times. Okay, if you see, you have file 1 here, for next you have file 2, then you have file 3, and you have file 4. Okay, so our setup is good. Let me just go ahead, delete this activity, and I'm going to create a copy activity in it. Copy files. Since it's a CSV, we already have the data set created. So I'm going to say source variable input is going to be my directory in the source container. Pretty standard stuff that we have seen in copy activity sessions. And here I'm going to define the file name. But for that, I think I have to use concatenation because I also have the extension. So I'm going to say concat item, and as you can see, at the rate is going to come only in the beginning. Earlier when I was not having this concat, it was getting appended with item, but right now it is getting appended with concat, and item is coming without any at the rate before it. So this is the way expressions are created in your Azure Data Factory. You just have to keep this in mind, that at the rate is going to only come in the beginning of the expression, and after that you have to say you want to append .csv. Okay, so this is going to be your file name. In the sync, again same data set, I'm going to say sync variable output, and again same thing. So instead of recreating, I'm just going to copy paste this expression. Okay, fine. Now let me go back to my data lake, and I have to put the 4 files that I just created in my source container. Source variable input, let me delete these 3, I don't need them anymore, and I'm going to upload the 4 files: file 1, file 2, file 3, file 4. Open, upload. Fine. Okay, now let me validate. Everything should be good. Validate copy runtime. Great. Let me publish. We'll discuss about this validate copy runtime later. For now, you just focus about this validate. So validate is going to check whether everything that you have configured in your pipeline is as per ADF norms. If there is anything that is not right, ADF is going to give you an error. Similar to how you create program and then you compile. So compile is going to give you any errors that you have created while creating your program in syntax or in logic. Okay, so that kind of stuff. So validate is for that. Okay, so our pipeline has been published and our files are also in position. So let me go back. I think I just have to verify whether we have a sync container in our ADLS and we have the path variable output. I just have to remove these. Okay, so we are ready to execute our pipeline. So I'm going to now trigger, instead of doing a debug, I'm just going to trigger the pipeline. Trigger now. View pipeline run. As you can see, the file array has been initialized, so we have the array with us, and after that it is looping. So the first file has been copied, file1.csv, as you can see in the sync now. Similar to this, second file is now in queue. Second file is also copied. File 2 is also there in the sync now. Third is queued. Third is successful. Just be mindful that right now only one copy activity is executing at any point in time. So it is sequential. Remember the sequential option we checked while we were creating our for each activity? Okay. So all of our files are now in the sync, but let me just delete all of them. Now we are going to check what is going to be the difference in execution if we choose batch. So a batch count, we are going to say, suppose 3. I think it is pretty obvious, but still, let's just see. I'm publishing the changes one more time. And I'm going to re-trigger my pipeline. So it is not sequential anymore. And now let's see. If you see, copy files are getting triggered for the first 3 files. So right earlier what used to happen, only one copy file activity was getting triggered because it was in sequence. So first activity is going to complete, then only second activity will start. But when we say batch of 3, it is going to take first 3 and after that next 3 and so on and so forth. But right now, as you can see, we have only 4 items. So it has successfully executed for first 3 and after that there was only one item left, so it picked the last item in the second batch. Okay, so this is how the batch and sequential option work in our for each activity. Okay, so for each activity along with filter and our if condition activity is, I think, the most common activities to create branches and to pass control to different parts of data factory pipeline. So that is why it is very important that you should know at least these 3 activities from iteration and conditional section. But we will see whatever is remaining, but these 3 are very important. After that we have until, I think there is switch, and there is one more if I'm not wrong. Let me just see. No, I think there are only two, switch and until. So we will see in the later session switch and until, and after that we are going to perform a like major project which will involve copy activity and whatever activities we have covered so far, and then we will move to other service related activities, and in the last part we are going to take a look at the data flow. Okay, so this is how I'm going to structure this particular playlist. I hope you enjoyed today's session. Please like, share and subscribe. Please provide your feedbacks in the comments so that I can improve my content. Okay, thank you so much for joining me, and let's meet in the next session.